Hello, everyone. It's Danielle Ronan with Keller Williams Realty. Today is May 8th, and we are continuing our series of connecting community leaders within Monroe and beyond to help each other find resources that we can use while we're still sort of navigating our way through this pandemic. And my guest today is Debbie Malewicki. She is the head of Integrity First Support Learning Solutions. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Danielle. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Debbie has been a guest of mine before in my Park Bench venture, parkbench.com/Monroe-CT. I almost forgot what that was. And so I'm happy to have you back because you have something to share with us today that could be of significant interest to those of us like myself who have a graduating senior going to college, and it's those college placement exams that they have to take to gauge what level they're at when they enter college. And so I know my son, for instance, will have to take a language and as well as a math placement. And so you're here to talk about how you could save us a little bit of money, a little bit of time, and certainly the grief. And so I want to give you the floor and share with us your knowledge and your solutions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Danielle. So, what I want to discuss is college placement exams, and there are top three reasons right now why many college students are likely to do much more poorly on them than they would in years past. So here's a kind of how it's gone in years past. You go to freshman orientation over the summer, and usually the morning of the second day, students go in, they take their placement exams on campus. These are standardized tests. And about 2.5 hours later, because as a university director, I was all typically hanging out with the parents, all of a sudden the texts start rolling in and parents are yelling, "What do you mean you placed into pre-calculus? You've already finished AP Calc 1. And all of a sudden the dollar signs are kind of adding up in their brains, and they're realizing, oh wow, this is a potentially extra 2 semesters of math courses. What am I going to do at this point? And moment of panic tends to set in about now. I'm going to back it up though to where we are right now, because many students will be taking these placement exams remotely, and some of them will be waiting until they physically arrive on campus in the fall, presuming that their campuses are not going to be doing online classes again in the fall, and that's a discussion for another time. But we've got 3 things that are working against them right now. One is that the current high school seniors are out of practice with standardized testing. And that's because they haven't needed to, or actually in some cases received the opportunity to retake their SATs or ACTs to wrap up the AP tests in the traditional format, and they are being offered in abbreviated formats online. So A, we're out of touch with standardized testing. B is that in an effort to just try to keep up with the distance learning model, high school teachers are in all likelihood focusing more on their freshmen through juniors, and they're not doing as much of that final content prep for the seniors. And the third one, and I think every parent out there of any student right now can testify that our kids are in an early summer slide. Many of them have just kind of tuned out, or they're feeling overwhelmed. And I think for the seniors in particular, they're looking and saying, here in Monroe at least, their grades aren't even going to be counting on their transcript in most cases. So, hey, early summer slide, let me just kick back and relax, not realizing the importance of these college placement exams.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you for just 1 second. You said that this is a standardized test, so do all universities and colleges use the same test? the same
Well,
exact test to place?
that's an excellent question. And the answer is no, they do not.
Oh, okay.
Many schools, well, first of all, let me say, not every school is doing placement exams, particularly in consideration of what's happening right
Hmm.
now. So you do want to talk to your daughter or son's school first and foremost and find out what approach they're taking. Some of them have decided that they're just going to go with high school transcripts and any standardized testing that they were already holding going into it.
Got it.
But these are not the majority of schools. So what the majority of schools are doing, most of them seem to be focused on tests that are under Accuplacer or ALEKS, and that's ALEKS. And ALEKS is an online standardized exam that students can take remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Presently, and I was just doing some research in the last 24 hours, but Accuplacer still is an in-person exam. So what I'm getting from people who are in the field, and I have quite a few connections in the
Sure.
field, is that many of the students are going to be asked to take these exams at the last minute when they show up on campus in
Wow.
August.
Hopefully they do show up on campus in August.
Right, absolutely. Or in some cases, they're being asked to take them remotely over the summer. But Accuplacer in particular, and they're the most popular one, not the
Gotcha.
only game in town, but the most popular one, they don't have a remote option.
Gotcha.
So if your student is not able to go to summer orientation because summer orientation isn't being held.
Well, they're doing them virtually. At least I know school that my son will be attending, they're doing a virtual orientation.
Absolutely. And so what in some cases the students may be encouraged to do is find a local testing center that offers Accuplacer, and their Accuplacer is through the College Board, and to test in that respect. And I don't have a lot of information on that one right now because the schools are still deciding what they're doing in this respect,
Yeah.
and the College Board is still preparing. And I have been looking at different websites in preparation for today. So you're going to
Okay.
have to watch this one. So here's what I want to say. We know what the potential issues are for the graduating seniors. What are the solutions? Well, the number one solution is to poke, prod, do whatever you can to kind of try to pull your student out of that early summer slide and realize that they do need to prepare for these tests. Now, the number one reason that people don't do it is a misimpression that if they have AP classes, if they already took a class in high school, that this means they're automatically testing out of this class on the college level. That is not the case.
Hmm.
Okay, if you have AP credits, when you take these standardized tests, and they say that you belong one or two classes earlier, what's going to happen is that they will accept your AP credits, no question about that, but they will be recategorized as electives that count toward graduation, whereas your daughter or son will then be expected to retake the class on the college level to make sure that they have truly mastered the material.
So let me just ask you, these types of classes would clearly, if they are important to their particular field of study,
Yes.
right? So let's take, for instance, I'll just use my son as an example. He intends to study international business.
Mm-hmm.
And so the university that he will be attending will have math requirements clearly because
Yes.
it's business. They also will have language requirements because it's international.
Right.
So he will be expected to master a certain level of math and a certain level of language by the time he graduates. And so what level he comes in will largely determine what his required coursework is going to look like. And if he slides back, that's just going to be an additional amount of classes in addition to what he will need to graduate. So is that really what you're talking about here?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
multiple items that you've touched on. It's more money to repeat the class. And, you know, each of you know what the tuition credit amount is at your son or daughter's school. But let's say it's $4,000 for a 3-credit class because they're going to a private university. And that's pretty standard in this ballpark, 3,500 to 4,000 for a class. They place back one level in math and one level in writing. Well, right there, that's an extra $4,000 and I'm sorry, $8,000.
$8,000,
Right. And you're looking at potentially extra time to move through the program. And I say that, and this is largely determined by how stringent the requirements are for a program. If you're, let's say, pre-med or engineering, there is very little wiggle room there. So now what you're going to find is that your daughter or son is probably looking at summer intercession classes to
or winter.
Yep, or winter. And that is not ideal for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that intercession classes are not covered under their financial aid packages. And that is very true for student athletes as well. Student athletes can get some great scholarships on tuition. They do not cover summer or winter intercession classes.
I didn't know that. Look at that.
Right, and that's typical at any school. It's not a given one. It's kind of a federal deal because financial aid is typically federal.
Right, of course.
Okay. So the other things that you want to keep in mind here is push your kid to do some prep work for these tests. And when we're done a little bit later today, if you want to check out our website, and I'm sure you're going to have this up at the end, I'm going to put resources on there for parents to look to actually find sample questions for math, for English, and they also want to be checking with the school to see if there's a chemistry requirement, because many schools require the students to take the ALEKS, and again, that's ALEKS, chemistry placement exam before going in the door and starting their first class. So you can find sample questions for each of these online for free, not a big deal. Go through. If you find that that summer slump is just hitting you hard, or your son or daughter is taking some of these tests and they're bombing, that's the time to reach out to a company such as mine and start working with a tutor. And in particular, we have professional tutors. These are the faculty who are often teaching these classes on the university level who can help them prepare. You don't really want to go to a student tutor for this kind of thing because they don't teach the classes. They've taken these exams once in a haze. They're not going to be as prepared to work with you. Now, putting all of that aside, let's say that you watch this video and nothing really changes, and then your son or daughter takes these exams, gets the results back, and you go, oh, wow. Am I in a hole that I can't dig myself out of at this point? And the answer is, in most cases, no, you're not, if you start acting sooner versus later. So let me tell you what the wrong way is to do, to approach things here. And that's to get on the phone or email and start yelling and screaming at the chair of the department about how your kid really knows more than these tests show, and can't she just have another chance? And really, I'm sure that if you place her into Calc 1, there aren't going to be any issues, etc. That's not the chair's job. The chair's job is to make sure everybody in the classroom has demonstrated the working knowledge to be there so that the other students aren't slowed down. So here's, this is what you can do. In this country, we have about 5,300 higher ed institutions. I'm including in there beauty schools and mechanic schools. We have about 4,100 schools that are four-year degree programs. And of those 4,100, 3,000 of them work with CLEP through the College Board. So CLEP is CLEP, and CLEP exams are a fabulous way to go on a few fronts. First of all, if you're an adult returning to school and you have real life experience, or if you've studied abroad, if you've been in the military, you can take a CLEP exam and you can test out of classes. You can also do it if you don't believe your college placement exam results are accurate of your actual working knowledge. You do have to check because, as I said, 3,000, 4,100, that means that about 1 in 4 people are going to a school where they're not working with CLEP. But it doesn't hurt to ask if they will start working with CLEP.
And I would venture to guess that the more competitive schools would not. Your IVs.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case, because IVs are looking at a number of students who are homeschooled. In fact, I believe was it either Yale or Harvard about 5 years ago had a class that was 50% homeschooled students. It was, I remember reading the article and just being amazed that it was that high. So using the CLEP can prove that they have mastered this material, especially you mentioned your son is looking at international business. Well, CLEP covers 32 subjects, including most modern languages. So if he can take a couple of these exams, that's potentially 2 semesters of tuition money. So speaking of money, CLEP is $85 per exam on average. I say on average because it's, I think, another $15 to $20 for anything that has a writing component that has to be manually graded. And then you have the fee for the testing center where you're going to take it. So an $85 exam is ballpark going to cost you $125 to go in, take what's a 90-minute test. Writing components are 2-hour tests.
Gotcha.
And you go through, and if you pass it, then the results are sent to the school. Now, what constitutes passing is determined solely by the department in question. So if you're talking about the math department at your son's university, then they need to say, A, we accept the CLEP exam, and B, this is the minimum score we're going to accept for this particular class.
Sure.
Other things that you want to keep in mind with CLEP is that you can only register for one at a time. So in that scenario I gave you earlier with the student who had taken AP Calc 1 in high school but was placed into pre-calculus, she would need to register for pre-calculus, pass the exam, get the results, and then turn around and register for the Calc 1 exam. And why am I saying this? Because timing is everything. If you have a student who is going to try to get out of 1 or 2 of these classes, you don't want to wait until they're showing up at campus in the fall, or you don't want to wait until, let's say they take their exams online in July, and then you decide to wait another month. Well, everybody and their uncle is going to be trying to get into CLEP centers.
Right.
And by the way, this is through the College Board, so you want to look at their website, and there are only going to be so many seats. So I would say, as soon as you have the results, if you're not happy with them, start sooner versus later. The College Board recommends at least 20 hours of study time before sitting for one of their tests. So this is where I'm talking about that early summer slide. You have to figure if that's what they're recommending,
Right.
that's at least what your student should be doing before taking the college placement exam.
Okay, so
And
where does Integrity First come into all of this? How do you help?
okay, so we can help on multiple levels here. First of all, you can get on the phone with us for a 30-minute free consultation on kind of getting your act together. What in general would be great study tips, organizations for preparing for these tests, where can you look for sample tests, things along those lines. That we're going to do for you for free. If you find that your son or daughter needs more help, and I think many people are going to be in this position, we have very reasonably priced tutors. And I say that because most of our competitors in this area, professional tutors, are charging 80 to 150 an hour. We are $50 to $55 an hour for people with a master's degree or doctorate and a number of years of university level teaching experience in the field.
Okay.
And yep, and if you can actually get a couple of your son or daughter's friends together and they want to do this all together, it can drop down to $25 to $30 an hour.
Per student, so a group, but per student. Gotcha.
Yes. Yep. So we're really trying to work with you. The other thing is, yes, we are a CLEP a CLEP testing center. We will be opening pretty much as soon as the governor tells us that we're able to do so. So we are in New Haven. We have plenty of free on-site parking. We're on the bus lines, and we're an easy 30-minute or less commute from Monroe. We are not by far the only CLEP testing center in the country. And if your daughter or son ends up going off to school, let's say they're a student athlete or something and they're in Pennsylvania or Idaho or wherever, just go on the College Board website and look up the closest CLEP testing center. And you can run with it from there. But please don't wait to do it once you have the results back. In particular, anything with a writing component, so that's modern languages, English, ESL, they have about a 2-week turnaround time from when you take the exam to when they mail out the results to the campus.
Gotcha.
So if you're there and you're not doing this until after you've arrived, you're going to miss the add drop period. And then your student is going to need to decide, do you stay in this course hoping that you passed and or hoping that you didn't, and then are you going to be looking at retaking this class in a future term? So better to start sooner versus later.
Okay. So we're about running out of time at this point. I want you to send me resources and any links you send me when I post the video and replay, I'll attach that, including your contact information. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that you didn't cover that you want to make sure you say?
About the only thing that I would add, and this isn't about college placement testing, but we are open all summer for regular tutoring services. So if you have a student who's already in college or who's getting an early jump on things, we have tutors ready, willing, and able to work with you. And we're talking about seniors at the last minute here for this video, but we also do college placement, college preparation, anything from early stages, talking about what's the right path for you, what fits in your budget, what fits in your personal aspirations, and advice on the college application process. We even have somebody on staff who is a higher ed financial aid specialist, and they can guide you through the best way to fill out the FAFSA paperwork
Yeah.
and look into scholarships and grant money. And they're great people to sit down with once you have competing offers in hand and weigh out the pros and cons of those offers, because it's not always as obvious as it appears. Some of these offers only go for 1 or 2 years.
Right.
Others are for all 4. Some have GPA stipulations. Some
Absolutely.
require you to live on campus. So, you know, it's nice to have that independent third party input so that you can make what's the best decision for you and your student.
Great.
And
Well,
that's pretty much
Debbie,
what I want to say. Thanks.
amazing information, great content, completely thorough, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share this. I trust that many people are going to really find this to be a wealth of information and help and a resource, and hopefully contact you as one of those resources.
Great.
So thanks again for having this call with me.
Thanks for inviting me.
You are very welcome. So you take care, and we will talk soon. All right, Debbie, have an awesome day. Thank you.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.